Welcome to Project Planning for Post-Harvest Efficiency, Profitability, and Food Safety. In this section, we're going to talk about bringing it all together and putting a plan together to actually get the job done. So this section is called Executing Your Plan, Next Steps, Resources, and Contact. So we've talked about a lot of different parts and pieces that need to come together for a really effective post-harvest space. A lot of times it can really be overwhelming. There's so many different things to consider. Oftentimes the work that needs to be done is not normal work for people who are generally growing fruits and vegetables. And so one of the things we really encourage is taking the time to think about prioritizing project components. It's likely you're going to run into budget challenges. Some of this stuff gets expensive pretty quick, especially if it's hired in. So thinking about how to what's most important when, what should be done first. And we'll get into that in just a second. It's also important to keep in mind that these can be really stressful projects. Construction projects can be a nightmare. And so thinking ahead about how to manage that stress and how to manage the time involved in what can be a significant project that's going to take a lot of your time and a lot of your attention and quite a bit of your pocketbook. So another key part of that is balancing between hiring in labor and spending your own labor to get different parts of the project done. We're all good at different things, and there may be things that are best hired in, or there may be things where you can do it just as well as somebody else. So thinking through what parts of the project are worth hiring in expertise for and what parts of the project you might be able to do yourself, or you might have somebody on your crew and on your team who can do. Working with contractors can bring its own unique challenges. This is a pretty unique type of construction project. This is not building a home. This is a unique use of space, and it has some pretty unique design and construction characteristics that need to be accounted for. We've talked about a number of those. Some of the examples are the floors, and whether and how to integrate drains into those floors and what those drains should look like. There's different kinds of materials used because we're considering how to protect some of the framing, for example, and how to keep moisture out of the walls and how to keep the walls cleanable. Even something as run-of-the-mill as vapor barriers. Oftentimes we have conversations with contractors who have built thousands of homes and know exactly what to do with vapor barriers for a home. And the minute you get into a wash pack shed being used in the middle of winter, it's a slightly different situation. So thinking about the unique nature of these projects, it does get complicated, but take a deep breath. We'll get there. Let's break it down.
First, you've got to get this plan, what you're doing, into your head and into three-dimensional space or footprint space. And it really is important to take your time with that. Think through something, don't jump to conclusions, and work, if you're working with employees, get them set, in your crew meetings, say the next couple of meetings, taking some time to come through and work through, get a bunch of different minds working on production efficiency issue and footprint layout and that kind of stuff. So this is this photo here I love. I actually walked in and took this photo, walked in on a farm where the employees at the end of the day were doing a planning project, and they had the little cutouts and they were pushing some stuff around, and then they were talking about it and putting pros and cons on the whiteboard, and it looked to me like a graduate design seminar class or something. And they got some real incredibly good ideas out of this process, and also maybe more important, investment from their employees. Their employees felt valued because they knew they're the ones in there day in, day out, and they were able to actually say what some of the issues were and get them out, and then apply their problem-solving ability to do that. That has incredible value. So once you have an idea on paper, really scaling it, and this could be done outside, it can be done inside, actually setting some things up or laying out outside your footprint and setting up a temporary system and actually working in it for a few days. You can do paper, these sketches and paper cutouts are real important. work around equipment, walking around crates, numbers of employees. All these things are really important to consider. And then financing, you got to take your time with that too, because jumping into something that you can't either pay for or you haven't phased appropriately can be very stressful on the finances. So really take your time, think through this stuff. It doesn't have to happen right away.
The other thing that can come out of an exercise like this with the crew is just really flipping things completely, like turning things on their head and turning things all the way around. And it gives you the flexibility and the freedom to really think about things from scratch and to not necessarily be wed to the way it's always been done or entrenched in a particular layout. So there's something really freeing about getting these little cutouts on a rough floor plan, a rough empty floor plan. It lets us play. And I think that's a really important piece of the creative planning process, is making sure everybody feels free to say, what if we move the 3-bay sink in the opposite corner of the room? What would that look like? So we talked earlier about prioritizing work and components of the project, and let's talk about this in a little bit more deeply. So what we're looking at here are two different basic kinds of projects: a new construction and a renovation. And these are somewhat typical phases that we see people approach the projects in. And it's a way of taking a large, complex, sometimes costly project and breaking it down into more manageable pieces, both in terms of the amount of attention and time it's going to take, but also the other resources such as money. So in a new construction, phase one might simply be a poured slab floor and a pole barn with a roof, no walls. It gives you a shaded space out of the weather and a decent floor with maybe even with drains that lets you roll things around on wheels, which might be a significant improvement over washing out in the open on gravel or on turf. And then in phase two, maybe you add walls and some insulation. So now you're extending the comfortable period of the year when you're able to use this space. And ultimately in phase three, maybe there's extended porches or overhangs where you have some covered outside storage. Maybe you add heat at this point. Maybe there's some new equipment that comes in at some point during these phases as well. In the case of a renovation, phase one might be as simple as just getting the old stuff off the walls. So some degree of gutting the building and taking a look at the structural condition. So there might be some repairs needed to the structural elements of the building. Maybe you take some time to level a floor. One of the very common buildings that we see be reused for produce wash pack are former dairy, either freestall or tie stalls. And so oftentimes those floors need to be leveled in order to be functional for a different kind of use. And maybe you add some drainage during this step as well. If you're going to be doing any work on the floor, it's probably worth thinking about drainage. In phase two, maybe you upgrade utilities. You bring in more water, you bring in better electricity or higher current electricity. Maybe you start adding coolers where there wasn't a cooler. Oftentimes cold storage is brought in phase one if it doesn't yet exist, because a cold chain is such an important piece of post-harvest quality. And then in phase three on a renovation, maybe you upgrade the surfaces to more cleanable, more durable finished surfaces that will be more resistant to water and splash. Maybe you improve the fixtures and shatter-free lighting and things like that.
Yeah, one of the real benefits of this kind of phased work, as well as that I've seen again and again, that projects end up the plans for phase three especially end up getting refined in phase one and phase two, and refined for the better. In other words, you don't really know what you're into until you get into it. And once you're into it in phase one and in the space, actually in phase one, you're working in the space, you realize, oh, the utility should go here, or we really need water here. And oh, the sun's coming in or the wind's blowing this direction, and you start about phase two. And then in phase two, right, where it's just being respectful of that process, that it's going to get you a better product at the end. And of course, the drawback, potential pitfall, is that you get into phase one, and it's like, you know, you never get any further, and because it's functional, and you sort of lose momentum. And so, you know, balancing those things is important. And but phase approach is really important in general too for a good product.
These projects and the dreams can be big and daunting and an impressive project when all said and done and complete. But I think breaking them up into phases might make it into bite-sized pieces that you can either afford a little bit more, either right off the bat, you know, you can break it down in so it as money becomes available, or time, because these projects take a long time, and breaking it up into usable sections like we just explained here can make such a big project a little less intimidating. And thinking about intentionally stretching it out may make that reality become real without so much stress.
It's important to return to flow through the whole process of your planning. So back on 2 dimensions, starting with that, and really focusing on all levels of flow and where your product's going, movement around the building, especially when things get tight. And imagine your worst times were when you're under the most stress, because that's when the weaknesses come out. So where are the pinch points going to be? People coming in, customers might be coming in if they've got a CSA pickup. Where are people parking? How are they tripping over themselves? Where are they going to need to go? Think through those eventualities. And remember to return to water. Of course, that's really important in the wash pack, not only where the water is coming from, and is it convenient, and then is it draining well, and are we able to clean up from that and get it to dry out? And of course, waste. You're producing cull all the time, and compost, trash, and all of this should have dedicated containers and a system. And think about waste and clean up around buildings as well. That's very important to keep the clutter away from the edges of buildings, because rodents, especially rats and mice, really love that for protection, and it allows them to access a building where they otherwise might think not to.
This is an opportunity to sketch out your floor plan with a blank slate. Draw those arrows out and just highlight, where does the product, the people, the water come and go? Are they crisscrossing paths all the time, or does it make sense to kind of come in and move through the building in an efficient manner? There are a lot of things to include in the layout, so that's why it's important to start with the flow. Think about how things are moving through the building before you get down into the details. So once you're ready to get into the details a little bit more, you need to think about everything that's going to happen and everything that needs to go into this space. So where are you landing the product? Where's the product coming in or being set before washing? Where and how is it being washed? Packed, sorted? Is it being cooled? And then where is it being stored? Maybe in a cooler. What about the supplies to pack those things up? Are there other activities that need to happen within the space, like flower arranging or value adding to your products? So making something more than just what you're harvesting. And then where are the products being loaded out? So is that different than the load in space? How about your washing equipment? Does that have a space for use as well as a space for storage, or is it always out? I mean, that's just something to consider, because every farm's a little bit different. What about your work surfaces? What are you using for workbenches and countertops and workspaces? How about utilities? Where's the electric coming into the building? How about the water supply? Do you want hot water in the building or not? And how are you going to do that? And then drainage of that water. Drains for both your sinks or floor drainage is something to not forget as you get started planning your space. And then hand washing, bathroom and break areas. These aren't as exciting things to plan, but they need to be planned out. So It might make sense to have a hand wash sink where the door is, where the employees generally come in all the time. So you can come in and wash your hands, and that just helps the space stay clean. Same with a bathroom. Do you have a bathroom in here, or where is the closest bathroom? And same with the break area. Do you have a dedicated spot where you and your crew can take a break and you're not eating your lunch on the pack out table? And in addition to those things that I just mentioned, there is more. You've got to spend a lot of time thinking about what building materials you're going to use. What material are you going to use for the floor? Is it concrete, or are you working on the second floor of a barn? How are you going to deal with water or even dirt in that situation? What are you going to coat your wall and ceiling finish surfaces with? Is it durable to water? Is it going to withstand the dust and dirt? Do you have fork truck traffic that needs to be taken into consideration? There's a lot of different options there. So wall and ceiling finish surfaces. And insulation, how are you insulating the space? Is there a high humidity load or not? Is there currently pest problems that are going to want to get into that insulation or not? Think about lighting, windows, and solar direction. So layout of your building could change based on where the sun is shining. You might want your windows in the sun, or you might not, depending on how your building is laid out. Same with roof overhangs or heat gain. So think about the direction of the sun and your heating. That's something to add in here as well. Are you going to use it 3 or 4 seasons or not? Rats and other pests, how are you going to manage that? Traffic and parking, so not just the flow within your space, but outside your space. How are customers coming and going? How is the crew coming and going? How are you coming and going? Something to consideration is the land and space all around this building as well. And then runoff. Runoff is a big one. So roof lines and roof slopes. Where is all that rainwater going? Is that coming off the roof and pouring right in front of your door? Or is your door on a gable end? Or do you have a little bit of a dormer to break up that watershed away from your door? So there's some passive design elements like that that can really make it a nice space to be without getting hammered with water all the time. And where's that water going? Is it dumping all over your parking area, or where you're coming in and out? Or is it going to a place where it can be soaked into the ground? And multi-use spaces, like I said, do you have a kitchen in here, a commercial kitchen? Are you arranging flowers? Where's the maintenance happening? Is that happening in this space or near this space? And where are you storing things? Storage is something that often gets forgot about because it's not exciting either. Is where are you keeping your harvest containers? Where are you keeping your pack out materials and things like that? So there's always lots of things to store, and having a place for that is important to have a plan for.
In addition to storage, probably the most commonly sort of overlooked areas are these, the landing and loadout footprints. That space is really needed often in places, and it is a temporary space and needs to be kept clear for when boxes come in. Or having multiple, say, areas to dry totes. So harvest totes might want to dry outside on a landing, whereas the pack out and pack out totes might be inside and in a different place. Oh, and I should mention hallways too. So we don't have hallways, but they're in actual physical hallways, but there are walking zones. And really thinking about, you need at least 2 feet just to walk. And if you've got a dolly or bins, 3 feet, and the corners have to be more. So factor that into your floor design where you're moving.
So what are the next steps? We've just gone through a lot of material and a lot of things to consider. And so now it's time to kind of think about your project, because everyone is different. So where are you in the process? Are you planning things out? Are you modifying an existing space? Are you just getting started, or have you already started a project? So where are you in the planning or the budgeting or the layout steps of this phase of the project? Have you identified the points of pain that you're looking to address? Is it trying to get into an enclosed space because you're working in the shoulder seasons and you're cold and you're wet. Is there just too much clutter and other activities happening in there, and you need a dedicated space for washing of vegetables? So what are those points of pain you're looking to address, and are you meeting those needs? And then what peers can you visit or talk to? Who's around you that may be slightly larger, slightly ahead of you in a project similar to this that you can check out or talk to and learn from their examples as well? And then next is, who's your team? Is that your crew? Do you have a partner to talk to about this? Do you have contractors lined up, or are you going to do this entirely yourself? There's a lot of people that it takes to build something like this and pull this project together. So who are you going to include? Do you have financing lined up? Where are you getting your funding for this? A lot of things to consider, and now's the time to really step back and think about how this project is being pieced together.
On the team piece too, I'd suggest it's important to think about who's on your planning team, not just the project construction team, but also are there resources or people that may be worth pulling into that planning process to make sure you've got full visibility into all the different things that will help make it a success.
The team can really help on the planning side in reducing stress as well, and misery, like negative stress, and that's because trying to hold a big complicated project in your head and feel like you can do it all alone and at the same time run the farm, that juggling of too many things where you're not going to be able to execute it is what is really going to be the main source of that negative stress. And so just by making the space, inviting a team in and making the space for different people to weigh in will help you to create the structure that allows for successful implementation and compartmentalization of the different kinds of projects and planning spaces so that you can actually dig your teeth in an effective way.
So there are a variety of resources available that we have for you if you want to dive into all these topics more. Throughout the presentation, you saw there was links on the bottom, and that references more information available on every single one of these topics with relative links and all that. So all this can be found on our blog. go.uvm.edu/ag-eng will take you to our ag engineering blog. We also have a podcast, the Ag Engineering Podcast, where I talk about tools, tips, and techniques to improve the sustainability on your farm. So you can check that out as well. We've got a YouTube channel where we share tips like this related to the podcast or other on-farm visits. We share video on there. We're quite active on social media, so Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, UVMEXT-AG-ENG is our handle there. We've got UVM Extension has a produce safety portal where farmers can implement and upload case studies on specific examples of different pack sheds and build outs or upgrades that they have. So that is a resource available, and you're welcome to upload information to that as well.
The portal is, by and large, was designed as a crowdsourced but monitored platform. And the beauty of this is that while things are not necessarily as well crafted as you'll find them in the Ag-Eng blogs or podcasts and YouTube channels, they are very simple and easy to do. So you're a grower, you can snap a photo and you can just upload that photo, just a photo and a caption, photo, caption, different topic. It can be searched, everyone can see it. And this is an expanding resource that can be really helpful. Go in and search for photos of hose reels or hoses or equipment, and you'll come up with what's out there. CAPS is the Community Accreditation for Produce Safety, and that program has found its origins about 10 years ago, but has been up and running for the last 4. And it is a more or less self-guided template that allows you to work through your production and look at it with risk reduction glasses on and more or less write a produce safety plan simply by answering questions about what you're doing with all of your products and materials and how you take care of things. And the CAPS certificate program actually does a review of your plan, and you get scored, and you'll get feedback, and you revise things and finalize them and have a certificate as well. In this program, many of the lead growers in the state of Vermont are enrolled in.
So also, in addition to all these other resources which we've outlined, in addition to us, who are primarily focused on serving Vermont growers, your local extension service, no matter where you are, is also a resource that's available to you. No matter what state you're in, you're going to have a local extension organization that should be able to help you get connected with other resources. You might also be able to get some support from your local agency or Department of Agriculture, as well as your local USDA offices. Some of those offices, for example, the FSA, the Farm Services Administration, has programs to support projects like this as well. It's also conservation districts are sometimes involved in supporting this type of work. So think beyond sort of what you might normally think of as your support organizations, and certainly reach out to whoever is nearby to support the project. Know that we're always here to support you. You can reach out to us any number of ways, and we hope that you found this series of sessions helpful to you. Stay in touch. We would love to hear more questions. We would love your feedback in the form of comments. We'd love to hear new ideas. Maybe you found the latest and greatest thing that we didn't have an idea about when we put this material together. Any particular innovations that you've come up with or that you've seen. Certainly, if you've done something that benefited from any of these videos, we would love to hear that. In general, we would love to hear from you. So shoot us an email, produsesafety@uvm.edu. Reach out on social media. We're at UVMEXTAgEng. Again, we would love to hear from you. You can keep track of us on our blog at go.uvm.edu/ageng. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching this session of Project Planning for Post-Harvest Efficiency, Profitability, and Food Safety. We hope you're getting a lot out of it and learning things that you can apply to your farm. If you did learn something and do implement something on your farm, let us know. Or if you have a suggestion or a comment of something you've done, we'd love to hear it. So go ahead and comment below or send us an email at produsesafety@uvm.edu. Thanks for watching, and I hope you watch the next video.